Want to speak real English from your first lesson? Sign up for your free lifetime account at EnglishClass101.com.
This week we're doing a pronunciation roundup. Let's go. Hi everybody, welcome back to Ask Alisha, the weekly series where you ask me questions and I answer them. Maybe. First question is from the wrong spreadsheet. Okay, first question this week comes from Danny. Danny says, how do we say the TH sound naturally? Sometimes I can't stick my tongue out too much when speaking, or for example, when I say something in a long sentence quickly. A couple things to consider. One, there are two TH sounds. There's the TH sound like in think and this, where as Danny's talking about, your tongue kind of sticks out between your teeth. But it's not such a big motion actually. So it's not like you have to be really dramatic with how much you stick your tongue out, like th. It's a bit too much. Maybe when you practice, you can do that to kind of get used to how it feels. But when I say that sound and when native speakers make that TH sound, we're only sticking our tongue out a tiny bit, a really small bit between our teeth. So think. It's like the tip of the tongue only. So with practice, that sound will get easier. The other sound though with TH is something we hear in a word like the. So the tongue is actually like just touching the back of my teeth, or maybe like the back of my teeth and the top of my mouth a little bit. The way that the sound is produced is a little bit different. So when I say think and they're a little bit different sounds. So keep this in mind. If you're trying to say the, don't use the motion to pronounce the word think. If I'm saying the with a really exaggerated TH sound like in think, it's going to slow me down. So think about that. Next question comes from Maxime. Hi Maxime. Maxime says, how do you pronounce I shouldn't have done it, I couldn't have done it, and I wouldn't have done it? So here these are negative past perfect statements. So I'm using kind of exaggerated pronunciation here. I should not have becomes shouldn't have, but a native speaker, a native English speaker, an American English speaker will say shouldn't have. Shouldn't have done it, couldn't have done it, and wouldn't have done it. Shouldn't have, wouldn't have, and couldn't have that same v sound, but again, it makes it hard to say all of those sounds clearly in speech. If we're focusing a lot on saying those sounds clearly in speech, our speaking slows down. So we say shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't. Shouldn't have, couldn't have, and wouldn't have, I guess is sort of the in-between, like the medium kind of pronunciation there. But when speaking rapidly at very fast, like native level speed, we'll say shouldn't, couldn't, and wouldn't. So give those a try. Shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't. Shouldn't have, couldn't have, wouldn't have. Should not have, could not have, would not have. Shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't. Hope that helps. Okay, next follow-up question. Now, follow-up question to this question comes from Sunil. Sunil, hi. Sunil asks, can we use could for the future? So I'm guessing this is talking about future plans, in which case, yes, you can. When you're thinking about something you want to do or you're trying to decide what you might do, you can use could just to talk about the possibility of something. So we use could to say something is just possible. For example, I could go to the beach this weekend, or I could sleep in late tomorrow if I want to, or I could go and visit my parents next week. So these are all statements of just simple possibility. We're not saying I'm going to do that, or maybe I'll do that. We're only saying that it is possible. So that's what we use could for. For talking about future plans, yes, we can use could for simple possibility. Next question is another follow-up question. Follow-up question 2 from Bahar. Hi Bahar. Bahar says, my question is about can and could when I want to use these when asking for something. How do I use can and could in the right situation? When you're making a request, can is going to sound more casual. Could is going to sound a little more polite. If you're visiting a friend's house, you can say, can I have something to drink? Or could I have something to drink? Could sounds more polite in that case. Can is probably a little more natural since they're your friend. If you are, however, at like someone's office, you're visiting a colleague, you might instead use could I have something to drink? Or could I have a glass of water? That sounds a little more formal. If you're worried, just go with could. It sounds a little more polite. It's always correct. Then Bahar has a second question. Are would and might similar a little bit? And do both of them consist of possibility? Yes and no. Would is used to talk about potential situations. So we've talked about on this series before a pattern like if I were, blah, 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 I would. Like if I were a teacher, I would teach math. Or if I were rich, I would buy a house. So we use would to talk about unreal situations. In terms of like actual possibility, like future plans, we don't really use would in that way. Might, however, yes, we do use might to talk about possibility. So we use may and might to talk about something that has a fairly good chance, maybe like a 30 to 50% chance or so of happening. Like I may study later, or I might meet up with my friends for dinner tonight. The difference between may and might in American English in this usage in terms of talking about possibility is that might is more casual. Might is more often used in daily conversation. May sounds a bit formal. May sounds like a little bit too polite in most situations. Might is the one we use. So might refers to possibility. I might do something. He might do something. I might not do something as well. So in these situations, might is used for possibility, yes. So would is used more to talk about like potential in an unreal situation. Next question comes from Hong Mai Lin. I hope I pronounced it right, sorry. Hong Mai Lin says, hi, how do you pronounce I'd like and I like, please? Thank you so much. Aha, this is a very common question. I'd like versus I like. Lots of people ask too, how do I listen for the difference between these two? I'd like and I like. I'm trying to pronounce it very clearly right now. I'd like and I like. Of course, there's a D sound, but when native speakers speak quickly, the D sound kind of disappears. I'd like to, I'd like to, I like to, I like to. My tongue touches the top of my mouth when I make the D sound. I'd like. I think a better key to help you when you're listening for this sound, and I think that this is something native speakers unconsciously do, is we listen for the grammar in the entire sentence. We're not listening specifically for the I like or the I'd like there. We're listening to the grammar in the sentence. If, for example, it's at a restaurant and you say, I'd like a beer, please. That sentence makes sense, meaning I would like a beer, please. If we say, I like a beer, please, it's grammatically incorrect. I like beer is correct. I like beer, or I'd like a beer. I would like a beer. Those two sentences are correct, but they communicate different things. So listen for the grammar in the sentence. If you can listen to the grammar of the sentence overall, it can help you identify, did the speaker say I like or I'd like? This is a key point, I think. Next question comes from Aya. Aya, hi Aya. How do I pronounce words like important, written, and mountain in an American accent? Important, written, and mountain all have these T sounds in the middle of the word, but native speakers don't pronounce the T sound clearly like I just did. Instead, we say important, written, mountain. This has like an apostrophe sound almost, so important, important, important. We drop the T sound, or it sounds very soft. So this is how these three words are pronounced. You might hear this in other words too. Thanks for the question though. Next question comes from Kesavaraj. Sorry. What is the difference between tonight and this night? We use tonight in everyday conversation. What are you doing tonight? Where are you going tonight? Tonight I want to. Tonight I'm going to. Blah, blah, blah. We only use this night for like very formal speeches, for example. So tonight is the one that we use in everyday conversation. Those are all the questions that I want to answer this week. Thank you so much for sending your questions. Remember, you can send them to me at englishclass101.com/ask-Alisha. I'll check them out there. If you like the video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and check us out at englishclass101.com for some other good resources too. Thanks very much for watching this episode of Ask Alisha, and I will see you again next week. Bye bye. Pronunciation is hard.